suggest that we have got a bit of work to do. Certainly, if I had have been on that stage and I had have been asked to list the 4 or 5 great Australians, there's no doubt General Monash would have been on my list, and I believe should be on a short list of magnificent contributors to this nation. And in researching this book, I came across the speeches in the Federal Parliament on the death of General Monash on the 14th of October 1931. And it makes quite remarkable reading. The Searle, who wrote a book on Monash, has said this: "If the King himself had died, he could not have shown more respect than that given to the boy from Richmond and Jerilderie of Jewish Prussian parentage. The body lay in state with a military guard in the Queen's Hall at Parliament House," which is just up the road here. Hour after hour, a steady stream shuffled in and around the bier, including many wounded diggers and bereaved wives and mothers leaving their wreaths and bunches of homegrown flowers. And Lloyd George said a few years after the death of Monash that had the First World War gone on a further year, that he believed that General Haig, who was commanded the British forces, would have been replaced, and he would have been replaced by General Monash. So we have a great son of the Australian community, but there has never been a film made about the life of General Monash. And it is in the interest of all of us who believe that the Monash life and the contribution he made to Australia is worth recording. It is time such a film was made. Now, I've made that, given that message on a number of occasions, and I know that some people are interested, but to me, we have to continually reinforce the positive messages about Australia and about the contributions that people have made. And so that's my first message. The second message relates to the earlier comment of the Prime Minister of the triumph of good over evil, which this particular festival marks above all. But there's another famous saying. There is a saying that it is necessary for the good man to do nothing, for evil to triumph. And I think that's one of the big issues the modern world is faced with today. Anti-Semitism is rife. You get on the internet, you see the difficulties in Europe, the attacks on people and property, and we know that we are in a period that we would have never thought that we would see in our lifetime. And it is beholden on all of us, from the Parliament down, to see what we can do to tackle this. And I commend Michael Danby and my colleagues in the Federal Parliament who have brought forward a motion to deal with the particular issue of anti-Semitism and bring that to the wider community attention. But I will conclude by reading something that the Prime Minister wrote, which I think probably sums up the challenge that we are now faced with. And this again comes from the collection of speeches that I've put together. And the Prime Minister, a couple of days after the terrible Bali terrorist attacks, penned some words and which were delivered to the Parliament. And I think these words are worth sharing with you. He said, "Retreat from the war against terrorism will not purchase the retreaters' immunity from the attacks to the terrorists. That has been the experience of last year and has been the experience of mankind throughout history. You will not escape the reach of terrorism by imagining that if you roll yourself in a little ball, you will not be noticed. Because terrorism is not dispensed according to some hierarchy of disdain. It is dispensed in an indiscriminate, evil, hateful fashion. Those who imagine that it is dispensed according to a hierarchy of disdain do not understand history and are deluding themselves. We fight terrorists because we love freedom. We fight terrorism because we want to preserve the way of life that this country has. We fight terrorism because we share the values of other countries that are in the war against terrorism. We fight terrorism because it is intrinsically evil, and you do not seek covenant with evil, and you do not seek to reach an accommodation with those who would destroy your sons and daughters and take away the security and stability of the country." That's our view. I'm sure it's the view of people in this room. This is an occasion to be happy and to mark a victory. Well, there's a victory that we have to win now, and that's the victory against the terrorists. And the message I bring to you, this is a government that is totally committed to winning this war. Thank you very much.
This was where the victory did in fact occur, where there were few people who were prepared to stand up and fight for his rights. Without further ado, I'd like everyone to welcome once again Mr. Michael Danby, Federal Member of the Melbourne Port.
Thank you, Rabbis Lasovsky and Rowe, Senator Kemp, representing the Prime Minister, parliamentary colleague Tony Lupton, and Mayor of Melbourne, John Sow. Purim is indeed a time to celebrate a great victory. It's a time for happiness. I'm particularly pleased I'm fulfilling one of the mitzvahs by being here at the second reading of the Megillah that each one of us is meant to attend to. I think it's fantastic that Chabad organises this in the city so that people in the city can observe this commandment. It's wonderful to see it taking place all across Melbourne. As the Senator said, this is a special country. We are very blessed. I was thinking what the parallels were to the Persia of those days with Australia. Now, the closest I could get was not to Sir John Monash necessarily, but maybe to Sir Zelman Cowen, being the Mordechai of these days. Fortunately, in Australia, we have no Haman. For Senator Kemp's illumination, Haman was sort of a Persian version of Hitler. We live in a wonderful country where we have no such problems. We have many Hamans, as the Senator was saying, all around the world, that all Australians have to oppose, whether their names are Osama bin Laden or the criminals who stood in the dock in Bali with their mocking smiles after murdering 90 Australians. All of us have to stay united against these many Hamans. The wonderful thing about Australia is that we all stand united against these kind of people. The only serious thing I want to say, which is outside, I know, the spirit of Purim, where we're all meant to be celebrating this great victory, is to read to you one thing that I said during the debate on anti-Semitism 2 weeks ago, that Peter King, the member for Wentworth, who unfortunately is politically no longer with us, moved. The thing that I said is affects the intersection of the Jewish world with the Australian world. And I want to read it to you. It was the conclusion of my speech. It won't take long because I know the Megillah's coming. There are very few countries which have created successful pluralist societies. The United States and Australia are among them. This is a country where Christians, Jews, Muslims and atheists can, and usually do, live together in peace and tolerate each other's peculiarities. But today, this kind of society is under threat from the purveyors of a hateful totalitarian ideology, Islamist, not Islamic, Islamist fundamentalism. We saw their evil laughing faces recently in the dock in the Bali courtroom. Anti-Semitism is their chosen weapon. But it is not the Jews who are under threat. We saw that very clearly in Bali. This House, and I'm talking about the House of Representatives, should not delude itself that in condemning anti-Semitism, as I am confident, I was speaking in the debate, the House was going to do, it is doing the Jews a favour. By opposing anti-Semitism, this House is defending itself. It's defending Australia.